You think this is a debate club, son? You're in a courtroom now. That's what Judge Patterson said with a smirk, as 18-year-old Isaiah Miles stood quietly before him, hands in his pockets, accused of grand theft auto. The gallery chuckled. Even the prosecutor laughed. But then Isaiah calmly replied, "Your Honor, I'll be defending myself today." The fluorescent lights of Courtroom 7 buzzed overhead. Isaiah Miles stood alone at the defense table. Black hoodie, faded jeans, Nike sneakers with fraying laces. Nothing about him suggested anything extraordinary. Judge Harold Patterson peered down from his bench, reading glasses perched at the edge of his nose. 30 years on the bench had taught him what to expect from teenagers like Isaiah, especially ones from East Oakland. "Mr. Miles, are you certain you wish to waive your right to counsel?" The judge's tone carried the weariness of a man who'd seen this mistake before. "Yes, Your Honor." Isaiah's voice was clear, unwavering. No hint of street slang. No nervous fidgeting. The prosecutor, Assistant DA Vanessa Chen, didn't bother hiding her smirk. An easy win for her record. The public defender who'd been assigned to Isaiah sat in the back row, shaking his head. He'd tried to talk the kid out of this folly for hours. What nobody in that courtroom knew was that Isaiah had spent his childhood in the modest apartment of his Aunt Gloria, a retired paralegal who'd raised him after his mother's incarceration. While other kids played video games, Isaiah had pored over case law books his aunt brought home, fascinated by the intricate dance of legal procedure. "The charges against you are serious, Mr. Miles," Judge Patterson continued. "Grand theft auto is a felony. You're facing up to 3 years." Isaiah nodded respectfully. "I understand the gravity, Your Honor." The facts seemed straightforward. A 2021 BMW reported stolen. Isaiah arrested 3 blocks away from where the car was abandoned. His fingerprints found on the steering wheel. A textbook case. The gallery whispered. Most were law students observing what they assumed would be a routine proceeding. A few were community members who'd come to support Isaiah. Neighbors who'd watched him grow up, always with a book in hand, always asking questions beyond his years. "Very well," Judge Patterson sighed. "Ms. Chen, you may proceed with opening statements." Isaiah opened a weathered notebook on the table before him. Inside were meticulous notes written in precise handwriting. He'd been preparing for this moment all weekend, after his public defender had visited him for just 7 minutes in holding. No one expected what would happen next. No one except perhaps Gloria Miles, who sat in the front row, hands clasped in silent prayer for her nephew, the boy who'd fallen asleep to the sound of her reciting Miranda rights like bedtime stories. Assistant District Attorney Chen approached the jury box with confident strides. Her opening statement was polished, devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is a straightforward case of theft and flight. The defendant's fingerprints were found on the steering wheel of a stolen BMW. When officers approached him 3 blocks from where the vehicle was abandoned, he ran. The evidence is clear." Isaiah made no objections. He simply took notes, his expression unreadable. When his turn came, he stood slowly. "Thank you, Your Honor. I don't dispute that my fingerprints were on the steering wheel of that car. What I do dispute is how they got there and what that means." Judge Patterson raised an eyebrow. "Proceed." The prosecution called their first witness, Officer James Ramirez, who had arrested Isaiah. "Officer Ramirez," Chen prompted, "please tell the court where you encountered the defendant." "I was patrolling on 73rd Avenue when I saw the defendant walking away from the location where the stolen vehicle was recovered. Upon seeing my patrol car, he began running." Isaiah stood for cross-examination. The courtroom tensed. Officer Ramirez, in your written report, you state that you spotted me at 10:23 p.m. on 73rd and MacArthur. Is that correct? Yes, that's right. Isaiah approached with a document. I'd like to enter into evidence the GPS log from Officer Ramirez's patrol car on the night in question. Chen jumped up. Objection! Where did the defendant obtain this? Public records request, Your Honor, Isaiah responded calmly. Filed 3 days ago through proper channels. Judge Patterson's interest was piqued. Overruled. I'll allow it. Isaiah handed the document to Officer Ramirez. Could you please read the GPS coordinates and timestamp for your patrol vehicle at 10:23 p.m.? The officer frowned. It says 98th and Bancroft. That's approximately 25 blocks from where you claim to have seen me, isn't it? The officer shifted uncomfortably. There must be an error in the system. Is it also an error that your dashboard camera, which should be automatically activated when your lights go on, has no footage of my alleged flight? The gallery murmured. Judge Patterson leaned forward. Isaiah continued, methodical and precise. Now, regarding the fingerprints found on the steering wheel, did the forensic analyst who processed them testify to the chain of custody today? No, Officer Ramirez admitted. And are you aware that I frequented the 7-Eleven on MacArthur Boulevard earlier that day? The same location where the BMW was parked with its door open while the owner shopped inside? The officer hadn't known this. Isaiah approached with another document. I'd like to enter into evidence the security footage from 7-Eleven showing me briefly leaning into the open vehicle out of curiosity, but clearly not entering or driving it. Judge Patterson accepted the evidence, his earlier condescension fading fast. But Isaiah wasn't finished. He retrieved another document from his folder. Finally, I'd like to enter into evidence the original police transcript from the car's owner, Mr. Andrew Davidson. He began reading aloud. Victim describes perpetrator as white male, approximately mid-20s, with a sleeve tattoo on his right arm. The courtroom fell silent. Isaiah, a black teenager with no tattoos, stood in stark contrast to the description. No further questions for this witness, Your Honor? When the prosecution called the vehicle's owner to testify, Isaiah's cross-examination was equally devastating. Mr. Davidson, can you identify the person who stole your car? The man looked at Isaiah, confused. No, I've never seen him before. Because I'm not the person who stole your car, am I, Mr. Davidson? No, you don't match the description I gave police. If you've ever judged someone too quickly, let this be your reminder. Dignity can't be seen at a glance. Comment? I see you. If you believe everyone deserves a chance to speak their truth. By lunch recess, whispers filled the courthouse hallways. Law students furiously took notes. Local reporters who'd come for what they thought would be a routine case were frantically calling their editors. After lunch, the mood in courtroom 7 had transformed. The gallery was now packed. Judge Patterson's earlier dismissiveness had dissolved into intent focus. Ada Chen attempted to salvage her case. Your Honor, regardless of discrepancies in the officer's location, the defendant's fingerprints were still found in the stolen vehicle. Isaiah rose calmly. Ms. Chen has yet to establish that I ever drove the vehicle or participated in its theft. My fingerprints on the steering wheel can be fully explained by my brief examination of the car while it was legally parked with its door open, a fact corroborated by security footage. Judge Patterson nodded. Ms. Chen, do you have evidence directly linking Mr. Miles to the theft itself? Chen shuffled through her papers. Your Honor, the circumstantial evidence is insufficient, Isaiah interjected respectfully. and I move to highlight that Officer Ramirez's report contains demonstrably false information about his location. This calls into question the integrity of the entire investigation. Isaiah then methodically deconstructed each remaining element of the prosecution's case. He cited 3 precedent cases where similar circumstantial evidence was deemed insufficient. He questioned why no forensic comparison was made between the seat position and his height, pointing out that at 6 feet 2 inches he would have adjusted the seat, yet photos showed it pushed forward for someone shorter. Most damning was his final argument. The prosecution has not only failed to prove my guilt beyond reasonable doubt, they've actively ignored evidence of my innocence. The question we should be asking isn't whether I'm guilty, but why was I arrested when I clearly don't match the victim's description of the perpetrator? Judge Patterson removed his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. His earlier condescension had transformed into visible reflection. Ms. Chen, do you have any rebuttal to Mr. Miles's arguments? Chen stood. Your Honor, while there are inconsistencies in Officer Ramirez's report, the defendant's proximity to the crime scene and his fingerprints that are fully explained by security footage, Judge Patterson interrupted, and his proximity that relies on testimony from an officer who wasn't where he claimed to be. Isaiah remained standing, composed but unwavering. In light of the evidence presented, Judge Patterson continued, I find that the prosecution has failed to meet its burden of proof. Case dismissed. The gallery erupted in murmurs. A few people clapped, before the judge's stern look silenced them. As Isaiah gathered his materials, Judge Patterson spoke again. Mr. Miles, approach the bench. Isaiah complied. Where did you learn to do that? The judge asked, genuine curiosity replacing his earlier derision. My aunt's law books, Your Honor. And the public library. Judge Patterson nodded slowly. Consider law school, Mr. Miles. The profession needs minds like yours. Thank you, Your Honor. Isaiah's expression remained composed, but the faintest smile touched his lips. As Isaiah turned to leave, Ada Chen approached him. That was impressive, she admitted reluctantly. Just seeking truth, Ms. Chen. That's what the system is supposed to be about, isn't it? Outside the courthouse, sunlight glinted off the marble steps. Isaiah descended slowly, still processing what had just happened. His Aunt Gloria rushed forward, enveloping him in a tight embrace. I knew you could do it, she whispered, her voice breaking. I always knew. A small crowd had gathered. Neighbors, community members, and a few reporters who'd caught wind of the unusual proceedings. Isaiah, how does it feel to beat the system? A reporter called out, thrusting a microphone toward him. Isaiah paused, considering. I didn't beat the system. I used it correctly. That's how it's supposed to work. Another shouted, Are you planning to sue for wrongful arrest? Isaiah shook his head. I just want to move forward. As cameras flashed around him, Isaiah turned to his aunt. Let's go home. They walked together, ignoring the growing media frenzy. Isaiah's mind was already elsewhere. On his desk at home sat 3 community college applications, each with pre-law circled as his intended major. 2 weeks later, Isaiah passed the public defender's office on his way to submit his college applications. He paused, staring at the sign. Inside, overworked attorneys juggled impossible caseloads, trying to provide justice to those who couldn't afford it. He thought about the 7 minutes his assigned public defender had spent with him. Not out of indifference, but out of necessity. One attorney handling 63 cases that week. Isaiah stood there for a long moment, seeing his reflection in the glass door. Then he continued walking, purpose in his stride. not just to deliver his application, but toward a future where justice wouldn't depend on whether an 18-year-old could defend himself. Isaiah's story isn't about proving brilliance, it's about dismantling assumption. A calm voice, a clear mind, and years of quiet study turned a courtroom into a classroom. The real lesson? Justice should never depend on who you appear to be. Because behind every tired hoodie, every young defendant, there might be someone like Isaiah. Someone ready not just to defend themselves, but to challenge the system that never gave them a chance. The true measure of a society isn't how it treats those with power, but how it listens to those presumed to have none.